Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What's going on, Internet? Eric Van Holtz here, back again with another E-Commerce Conversations. Hope all's going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the table, I got a Christopher.
Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for having me, Eric.
Ooh, I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Good to see you. We go way back, like a good 6 or 7 years, I think, is when we first connected. It was like 2015.
2015. I met you. I had just launched a Kickstarter, and that was really the beginning of what I would consider the beginning of Greenbelly, my business. And I met you a few months after that. We met for lunch, and I was kind of talking to you about what should I do with my business.
Yeah.
Ground Zero is when we met.
You were so green. I mean, no pun intended. So your company is called Greenbelly. You sell meal replacement bars.
Yes, and we market them more as backpacking meals, but it's essentially 2 big, fat, fluffy meal bars in a single pouch that provides 650 calories.
Yeah. So you're taking on Soylent, the physical food-based one, and Soylent's just some kind of weak liquid form that you
Weak
can't
sauce.
take back. Yeah, they're super weak, man. Yeah, and I mean, those days were I remember that meeting because you were just so I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know, I've sold some things, but my numbers don't really work out. I got to live with mom. And yes. I mean, that's how you started, right? Living out of your parents' basement. And
100%. I had, without going too far back, I was an accounting major. I was an accountant for about a year and a half after college. And I quit my accounting job and I traveled for basically 2 years and did a lot of adventure travel, hiking, bicycling, that sort of thing. And when I came back, I was thinking, what are my options to make money? And the main options were go back to accounting, which I think I'd be back to where I was. And then the second option was start a business, which kind of seemed too good to be true. It would check all my boxes. If I could make money running my own business, living where I wanted to live, ideally doing it in an industry I was excited about, it really seemed too good to be true. But that's ultimately the path I went with. And my kind of thinking was, if I fail at this, I might waste my retirement savings, which wasn't that much at the time. But at the time, it was
What were you, 25 years old? Or
Yeah, but I think about 25. And so I around that time, I met you. I was a year in.
But an accountant losing his retirement savings is a lot different than some creative designer losing their retirement savings.
Right. And so when I met you, I was a year into the business. I think the first few months was product development. And frankly, I was working a lot, but I was wasting a lot of time. I was trying to figure out what's the best bookkeeping software. And I was like, dude, I didn't have any sales.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I met you, I was living at home and I had a $19,000 Kickstarter. And that was kind of enough for me to get out of making this food in my mom's kitchen and put in an order with what's called a co-packer, a third-party food manufacturer. And that was about where I was. And I really did, honestly, I didn't know how viable the business was because, right. $19,000 at the time, it actually felt like a decent amount. In hindsight, it was peanuts, right, to really try to get a business going. But yeah, I was really on the fence. I was super stoked about trying to make this thing work and kind of the too good to be true scenario. I wanted that life. I wanted the business to work, but I really didn't know how to bring the idea to fruition.
Yeah, I think it's, a couple things spoiler alerts. Was it too good to be true? Yes or no?
Well, it happened, right?
So well, you're still doing it.
I'm still doing it, so it couldn't have been, right?
Right. So business is, for anyone out there who's listening, who's not an entrepreneur, hasn't started their journey yet, business is an amazing thing that allows you to achieve essentially everything you want to do in life. It can give you freedom. It can give you problems to solve. It can, help you make a mark on the world from a societal improvement, kind of charity, like a B Corp cause. There's so many ways to get enjoyment out of business versus when you're working for a job that you don't love. Now, be clear, you can also get that same enjoyment working for a job that you love. So I don't want to shit on working for the man because there's a lot of great opportunities. I mean, imagine like working at SpaceX building rockets. Like there's no way I can build a rocket with my resources.
But for some people, that's the dream job.
Right. So there's a lot of ways of doing that. And basically, you can't spend your life doing shit jobs. Like if you're in one now, you just got to quit and go somewhere else. Even if it's not like, you just got to go something better. So sorry for digressing. So anyways, a couple things. You're making this out of your mom's kitchen. I assume that's not up to compliance or regulatory requirements.
No. And there was what's called cottage food laws at the time. And I think this is state specific, but in Georgia, I believe at the time it was $50,000 in revenue. As soon as you eclipsed $50,000 in revenue, annual revenue, then you were subject to USDA compliance, right? Which would mean your kitchen has to be up to code, all that stuff. And I mean, those laws are designed for, your grandma who wants to sell her pies on the corner, right? So I was in that transitional period where I was making food out of my mom's kitchen and selling it. And I knew that wasn't going to, I couldn't do that forever. Okay. And not to mention, it's a tough gig.
Well, it's good to know, like, I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs, they worry about following the regulations and the code and the bookkeeping software and like the licensing and all that. And, I think there are a lot of states that do have this kind of like ramp up period where, you can make stuff or sell it at a bake sale or whatever and not have to worry about going to a co-packer. So it's good to know that's an option out there where you can just get started, start making stuff. So, I mean, like, how do you make this? Like, do you just Google it and figure it out and start putting stuff together?
Yeah, I wish it was that easy. I mean, there's about a year that I mentioned there from idea to product on the market. And in that year, the first several months were really trying to figure out how to make this product. I was thinking, initially I had the idea to make a...
So hold on. With the Kickstarter, did you already have the product or you just had the idea?
I had the product.
Okay, cool.
So we'll talk some kind of rough dates. I believe the Kickstarter was March 2015. I really started the business, or working hard on the business in like March 2014.
Okay.
So let's step back to March 2014. I was fresh off of doing a 2-year travel, part of which was a 6-month hike of the Appalachian Trail, and part of which was a 3-month bicycle ride down the length of New Zealand. So in both of those, I was burning a lot of calories, kind of had the idea of a high-calorie food product. And I finished all of that travel at the very end of 2013. So early 2014, I'm sitting at my parents' house trying to figure out what in the hell am I going to do with my life. And started working on the idea of Greenbelly, some kind of high-calorie, all-natural food product that would be geared towards outdoor enthusiasts burning, 5,000 calories a day. So I start thinking about this product and what is it going to be? And the first actual idea was to do a goo, which would be like a peanut butter, honey, nuts, who knows what the hell was going to be in there. But I was starting to do that stuff in my mom's kitchen, mixing stuff together. I mean, after maybe, a couple of days of it, I was like, this is just junk. It's terrible. It's terrible. Flavor, composition, everything. So I started transitioning more towards the bar idea. Immediately with the bar idea, I knew that it was very complicated to get a bar. I think you can make a basic kind of bar, following some recipes online, but to get a bar that I wanted to have really high nutrition, make it taste good, use these specific ingredients, and be shelf stable and not have any funky ingredient reactions. I realized that this is over my head. I don't have any food background at all. So I started contacting nutritionists, all sorts of people that I thought, chefs, anybody and everybody I knew that I thought might know something about food. And eventually I came upon the term that I needed to know, which was food scientist. Mm-hmm. And those are essentially the people that make and develop the food product. So interviewed a few food scientists, started working with one. He was actually in New York and laid out the concept that I was thinking of: high nutrition, all natural ingredients, 2 bars. And we talked through a lot of things that we wanted to check off the list as far as what the product was going to be. And then started to work. So that was, March 2014 roughly, and took a few months to get a product that felt good about. So lots of samples back and forth through the mail, lots of iterations. I ended up taking a bunch of samples to a hiking festival, handing out a bunch of stuff for free, trying to get feedback. Is it too, salty? What's the texture like? All that kind of stuff. So I think by the end of summer 2014, I had a 90% there product, and then worked on trying to get a few customers after that. In late 2014, really kind of staggered through a few customers here and there. I sent a bunch of samples out to hiking bloggers and got a few articles written up that had a trickle of sales, but by no means was it enough for me to actually have a viable business and move out of my parents' house. So I started thinking about launching the Kickstarter, and that was going to kind of be, and in my mind, a make or break moment. If I could raise enough to get somebody to make these bars for me out of my mom's kitchen and see if there were enough customers to reach my Kickstarter goal, then that was going to kind of be the green light moment, and I was going to run with it from there. So
What was that number for you?
it was $10,000 was the
yeah.
goal, and then raised 19. But
How did you promote your Kickstarter? Was it just the momentum of Kickstarter at the time? Or because that's a lot of sales for something that's never been heard before. Like in hindsight.
it is kind of weird, right? I mean, I think the Manal guys,
Yeah, they've been on the show. So if you look in our archive, you can.
Jimmy, Doug, what's up?
Yeah.
I kind of looked up to their Kickstarter campaign and their business model of doing this. I talked to them a couple times, and they had done a really good job of kind of these kind of hand-to-hand combat marketing techniques of getting this audience together. And I think they just did a hell of a job on their video. But that was it, man. I was just like, all right, I'm going to do my best to make a good video. In hindsight, it was not up to par.
Yeah.
But I think most of the customers came from those initial small waves of hiking blogs that I said I contacted early on that I sent free samples to. Blogs at the time, social media was not like it is now. Instagram, I don't know what Instagram was doing in 2014. But I mean, the online influence was the micro bloggers had a voice and they had an audience at the time. And I just sent it out to a ton of them. So I think when Kickstarter went live, I had a few of them post, and I had a little bit of a wave from, a few months prior when a few of them mentioned me. I did have some customers. I did have a small newsletter at the time. So I think that little bit of foundation was crucial.
Yeah. How long did it take to close up the Kickstarter and then when you sent the products out?
I think Kickstarter ended in April. I think I had all orders shipped by maybe July, August.
Like a 3 or 4 month turnaround.
Yeah, and in that time period, I searched for a facility to help make the food, figure out how fulfillment was going to work out. I think a lot happened, I think, in those few months. Yeah.
Those early days, man, like you just solve problems so quickly. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was like looking back, I was like hopping on the phone like, hey, do you want to fulfill a $20,000 bar order? And they're like, who are you? Like, I called maybe 100 different like potential food manufacturers trying to find the right fit. And fortunately, I found one. We're still with them today.
Oh, no way. So what I want to do is kind of like fast forward to today. I remember in our early conversation, like margins were slim, like how are the numbers going to work out? Clearly, a number of years later, they're working out, you're doing well. One thing we talked about, we just happened to run into each other in the airport July 4th. And I think what you've done really well is you found balance in business and lifestyle. And a lot of people like to listen to the Dr. Squatch podcast because he's doing $100 million, or Moyes with Native, or Jamie with Schmitz, who sold for 9 figures. But how much of that is worth it if you're not enjoying the journey? And I think, like Chris, you've done a really good job of enjoying the journey and understanding the balance. So talk a little bit about that. Like, how have you maintained, your sanity in building this business while still being profitable and growing and fulfilling?
Well, thank you. I think that is a really good question, and I've done my best. And I think it's an oversimplification to just say, oh, I prioritize lifestyle and work well and everything's amazing. That's just not the case. So I'll say that on the front end. I have had waves of really stressed out, especially in those first couple of years when I didn't really know how viable the business was. So I was definitely not able to prioritize a healthy lifestyle work balance in those early days.
And you're 100% owner, right? You don't have any partners?
Yes. So I did my best in those early days. I did kind of make sure to balance what I thought were the kind of the staples of having a good life. And that was location independence at the time was a big one. So I was able to, and fortunately, working and living abroad was to my financial benefit because I didn't have any money. I was living in an apartment in Thailand for literally like $120 a month was my apartment cost. So to me, I was thinking about, am I in a place that I like to be? Yes. Am I surrounded by people I like to be around? Yes. Am I able to do activities on a regular basis that I enjoy doing? Yes. Is there potential with this business? Yes. So I was thinking about kind of the basics were there and I was willing to forge ahead with that. Fast forward a couple of years and the business was really viable. And, kind of like the basic metric for me, which was, have I replaced my corporate salary? And when that happened, then it was kind of like, it was symbolic, right? It was like,
I've made it.
I've made it. All of the stress and labor that I've gone through is, you could talk about all the intangibles about have I had a good time? Have I learned a lot? But at the end of the day, I was thinking about, is there any kind of metric or benchmark that I could gauge to, did I make the right decision to quit my job and pursue this business? I think once that happened, a lot changed for my personal life as well, because I felt like I kind of let off the stressful gas pedal. And I still was intent on growing the business. I was still working regular, if not longer than regular hours, but I was definitely enjoying my life a lot more. I was doing a lot more time on vacation. I was just pursuing more hobbies. I was taking drum lessons in Thailand. I was doing just different things that I never would have done otherwise. So it really was a fun journey. And I think I'm fortunate it has been a fun journey, man. I mean, really, it's pretty cool with it.
So how long were you in Thailand then?
Of the past, since about the time I saw you,
Yeah.
right, in late 2015, and it's mid 2021, so let's just say that's been 6 years. Of the past 6 years, I was probably in Thailand 2.5 of those
Okay.
collectively, right? So different intervals of 3 to 6 months at a time.
Yeah.
So
Okay. And then talk about, were you coming back to the States in between that, or were you just continuing to travel the vagabond lifestyle?
pretty vagabond. So, but I never was really anywhere for less than 3 months. So I was in Spain for like 8 months, in Guatemala 3 months.
Just tourist visas.
Exactly. Yep. Just bebopping around, really.
Talk about how challenging it is to run a company from overseas, essentially, is what you're doing, because time zones are different. Customer service, I would imagine, is challenging.
100%. There are, I think, pros and cons. Even like being here and seeing the stuff you have on site is pretty cool. So, I mean, for listeners, Eric has a lot of stuff on site. He's got some product development stuff on site for his fragrances. He's got a photo shoot if he wants to do any product shots. He's got some stuff on site. All of that I've had to do remotely. So if I wanted a photo shoot for a new product, well, you got to communicate back and forth. You got to email them. You got to ship them that product for product development. Like I said, even for the first round of the bars, I had to deal with a food scientist who was in New York, and several products since then. I've done product development. I've done overseas while they're in the States. So, I mean, I've shipped samples back and forth to Thailand.
Yeah.
You know, and that, I mean, that's very painful. And I almost always had at least one call, late night call a week, which is painful. But I think there are certain efficiencies and things to doing it online that I think being in the States or being in person might. I didn't want to deal with overhead. I didn't want to deal with rent. I didn't want to deal with lease, right? I'm sure that requires some bandwidth, you know? So overall, I mean, at the end of the day, I really just also didn't care that much. I was like, back to the lifestyle business thing. I think my priorities were so much focused on, is this on a day-to-day basis something I'm enjoying doing? And I don't think I would have been able to say yes if I were confined to the United States.
One of the most influential books for this kind of lifestyle is 4 Hour Work Week. Were you working 4 hours or no?
No, I was, especially for those first few years, I was definitely over 60.
Yeah.
And then I think tapered down to a few years in, I was working more like 40 or 50. And then now it's kind of all over the map, you know. But no, at no point in time was I ever close to doing 4 hours a week.
Was that ever a goal of yours, or did you just enjoy doing what you're doing, or you didn't feel like you could find someone who had the expertise or the cash flows to pay him?
No, and I do feel like there's a little bit of a misconception of people that if you're working online and you're living abroad, your goal is to get to that 4 hour work week. That was not my goal. I didn't want to be, it seems like the end goal with that kind of business or lifestyle is to work 4 hours a week and you've got an income that comes in passively. I knew a couple people that were optimizing their life for that. To me, like back to the work lifestyle balance, those people are 95% prioritizing lifestyle and 5% prioritizing business. I was much more on the maybe 50-50 spectrum. I still cared about growing my business. And given that, I don't think a 4 hour work week was ever possible. I mean, maybe if I were just to put a few things on autopilot, make a smaller income, have a smaller business, not be super concerned with growth. But if I was concerned with growth and long-term business, I don't think that a 4 hour business is possible.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think like the 4 hour work week was influential in the sense of you don't have to do everything. You know, find people who are good at doing things and kind of let them do it. But my challenge for a lot of people is like when you do things that you love, it doesn't matter how many hours it is. It's like,
true.
Like imagine your favorite thing in life, surfing, hiking, whatever. Imagine if you got paid to go hiking, then you've beat the system. Like that's how you beat the system, is doing something that you love.
True. And I guess there weren't that many times that I really felt like what I was doing on a daily basis was miserable. I mean, occasionally, like taxes, like, you know, like there would be occasional days I would be doing something that I'm like, I don't like this. But otherwise, I enjoy the day to day of working. So I never felt the need to like pull back.
Yeah. My biggest headaches are like when you order a batch of products and they come in bad. And you got to deal with that in that process. And you don't learn about it until customers start getting it. And you're like, oh, crap, you know? But
I mean, also, Beard Brand's bigger than Greenbelly. So I know that what you're involved with on a daily basis is you are able to kind of pick and choose. And I think that's a luxury that happens with some growth, right? So, I mean, take for me, for example, the least favorite thing under Greenbelly's umbrella that I could possibly be doing is making food.
Yeah.
Right. So that was, as time went on, I was able to outsource the things I don't want to do. Right. So, I mean, as time goes on and you're able to kind of carve out your day to day to be the things that you like doing. And so I think as time went on, things got better and better because you can kind of pick what you want to do more.
What are you still doing that you don't like doing?
The more litigious stuff, which I think is something I don't know if founder owners can really get away from. Like, my name's on all the paperwork for everything, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that's always going to require some percentage of my week. And that's by far my least favorite thing to deal with. So yeah, anything bookkeeping, taxes, reviewing contracts, and agreements, anything like that. I hate that stuff.
Well, I mean, I think you can hire lawyers and CPAs.
True.
But you still have to like get all this stuff over.
Yeah, even like when I talk to my accountant, like I still got to understand like what our business structure is. I care so little about that stuff, but there's some level of necessity of understanding that.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that I dislike. Otherwise, if I could just do marketing all day for backpacking food, that would be that's where it's at.
So let's talk about your strategy, because I remember in our conversation, like challenging you on, targeting the hiking person and maybe the price point and stuff like that. I think you might have been too aggressive with your price point. How has your marketing effort or your product shifted in the past 6 years?
Yeah. And just to credit you, I remember talking to you about my customers. We're talking about margins, I believe, and you're saying, well, why don't you raise your prices and or target a wealthier demographic? And at the time I was thinking, well, I could only target this long distance. They're called through hikers, which is what I had done, a 6-month hike of a trail. And I was worried at the time that, these guys, this is my only market opportunity and they don't have any money because they're unemployed for 6 months. And I didn't think that there was a customer base there that had any money. And you're like, what are you talking about? What, like, have you heard of Patagonia? And I remember I was like, that's a great point. I mean, Patagonia is wealthy, outdoorsy people, right? That's their whole shtick. And anyway, around that time, I increased the prices, and that was Greenbelly could not be here if I would not have increased my prices substantially. But the main marketing thing at the time, really the only thing I had done was PR outreach and reached out to a bunch of like hiking bloggers, like I mentioned. And from there, PR outreach still continued to be a big thing. Continued to reach out to outlets, bigger outlets, magazines, Backpacker Magazine, Bicycling Magazine, those kinds of more traditional outlets. And then content marketing took off. Content marketing, I was writing, because I had a lot of experience of hiking, I was just started thinking, well, on my newsletter, what could I include instead of doing all salesy stuff, saying, oh, we're going to have a discount code, this month. Right. Doing something like that, I was like, well, can I give them anything instead of just saying like, oh, buy my stuff? So I was thinking about what might be some content that they might enjoy that is something I knew or had some expertise in. And I started creating a couple backpacking articles on, tips to lighten your weight or things like that. And I noticed that we were getting some traffic to our website from those articles. And then from there, I started understanding, I could actually optimize some things for SEO and start to have more of a strategy behind what articles I'm writing. And that ended up being, to this day, a really big part of how we came to be. Lots of other small things, but if I were going to really say, like, we did a tiny bit on YouTube, we did a tiny bit on Facebook ads, we've done a little bit on some email automation, but at the end of the day, the content and blog traffic was big, going from a few thousand visitors a month to hundreds of thousands of visitors a month. That was a big thing, I think, was the content marketing.
Are most of your sales coming in through your website, or are you on Amazon as well? Have you played that beast?
Thankfully, Amazon is not the main revenue driver, but it continues to be a pillar, for better or for worse. And it's kind of the necessary evil. I know you have your own opinions on this, but yeah, Amazon is not, I don't know how much it's contributed to growth. Growth being, I can tell, like, for example, when we do our Amazon ads, a lot of our traffic comes from people searching from Greenbelly. So I'm like, well, if they already know who we are and they're searching for us, then what benefit does it add by being on this platform? Ideally, the benefit of being on Amazon would be is discoverability, right? That somebody finds out about Greenbelly because we're on this platform and they're searching for related keywords and they discover us. If that's the case, I'm stoked to be on Amazon, but I don't know how much.
Dude, I'll tell you, man, when we pulled off Amazon, I think we had the same problem. People would shop on beardbrand.com, find the product they want, and then load up amazon.com to buy the product. So I'm just giving Amazon margin for all the work that we did. And the customers are getting a worse experience too, because we do a lot of small things in our fulfillment. So we cut Amazon altogether back in, 2017, something like that.
So my question would be, is I don't know if you're able to quantify this, is what percentage of people might not have bought if you weren't on Amazon?
Well, so here, I'll give you the specific number. Well, not the specific numbers. I'll give you, let's say we were selling to a wholesale partner at the time. So if we sold to the wholesale partner $50,000, that means they were retailing it for $100,000. These numbers are all made up, but it's just for the ratios. So if we pulled off of Amazon, our break even would have been like, if we essentially sell like $75,000, we would have been up because we didn't have to give that margin to the wholesale company. If we wanted to maintain parity with the amount of volume that we're doing on Amazon, we would have had to sold an additional $100,000 per month on our store. Well, it ended up, we sold essentially an additional $200,000. Because what had happened is people would go, they would search beard brand. They'd be like, oh, Tree Ranger beard oil. I want that. They'd go to Amazon. They'd get the Tree Ranger beard oil, and Amazon would be like, hey, man, check out this Chinese brush. You know, check out these like crappy made scissors. Add them to your cart. So the person's spending, you know, on average like $50. 25 of those dollars went to us. Whereas when they buy on beard brand, they're like, oh, yeah, we've got a brush, the European made brush. And, you know, like Japanese steel scissors and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, yeah, I want that. So they spend the $50 with us versus the $50 on Amazon, only getting half of it. So pulling off of Amazon for us, because we're a brand focused company, actually like doubled the amount of sales we were doing.
I think that's a big distinction to make. Is from my point of view, it seems like the more commodity driven your product, the more Amazon could benefit your discoverability. And the more brand and unique your product, the less it could.
The more you're screwing yourself by being on Amazon.
Right.
100% I agree with that. There's no reason why Nike should be on Amazon. Because if someone wants Nike, they can go to Nike.com. Like there's, you know, like, oh man, I didn't get my Prime. Well, too bad. We're Nike, you know, like.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah. Fortunately, Amazon has not been massive. Fortunately and unfortunately, however you want to look at it, has not been massive for us, but it's still a player.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like let's say you're doing $10,000 a month on it. You could be doing $20,000 a month on your own website.
Yeah, I guess, you know, back to the discoverability, I don't know how much Amazon's helping us on discoverability.
You just got to test it and see. But it's a scary thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to turn off Amazon, you know, like.
Right. But I mean, they were such a pain in the butt to deal with. Oh my gosh.
When we made the decision, they were only made up like 10% of our business. So it goes back to that whole lifestyle thing. It's like, I was okay. Like, even if we lost 10% of our business, we're going to be fine. We can still put food on our table and a roof over our head.
Right.
So if they're a small portion, you can simplify your business model by not even having to deal with them.
No, and it fluctuates so much. But I mean, on any given month, it'll fluctuate on the percentage because like we're out of FBA stock right now.
Yeah.
It's like our FBA sales are going to be totally off. But I mean, we're more in probably the 25% range.
Okay.
So it would be something to play with, you know. But anyway, so back to the growth. Content marketing was big. PR was big. Yeah, that's been the main things. Joe Rogan helped. That was a really nice explosion.
He just talked about you guys, or you were on the show, or?
I was on the show.
Oh,
I was on the show back in 2017, and that came to be because of PR outreach. There was a hunting podcast that we had reached out to. Actually, no, I think they were friends of friends in the DC, and I had been on the hunting podcast, and Joe Rogan had been listening to that hunting podcast, and so started ordering some Greenbelly product, and then he was eating.
So he was a customer of yours. That's crazy.
He was that was a pretty organic relationship. He was a customer, and then eventually I saw him mentioning it several times on the show, and customers were talking about seeing us on the show. So I reached out to Joe, and yeah, because he bought from our store. I had his email address. So eventually I sent him an email, and yeah, we talked about coming on the show, and then hopped on the show, and that was a nice boost that year. It was 2017. So we were really starting to hit our stride, I think, in 2017, and that was a really nice boost to get that going.
Yeah, that's like, you know, for me, that's like the Shark Tank experience, you know, like being on Joe Rogan, I feel like is
probably similar parallels there, right?
To like appearing on Oprah. You know, like 20 years ago.
Right.
Like you got on Oprah, you were made. You get on Joe Rogan, you kind of...
Right. Yeah, the line growth of seeing our sales from 2015, 16, 17, and then just like it just went up to the next plateau post Joe Rogan.
Where can people learn more about you or reach out to you or buy your products, support you?
Greenbelly.co. Not been able to get the .com, but I've been working on it. But yeah, Greenbelly.co. And I'm not personally super active on Instagram or anything like that, but my email is chris@greenbellybar.com if you want to reach out to me.
Yeah. Buy some products, you know, like go on some hikes, take care of yourself, take care of your body.
Yeah. If you got a long hike coming up, check us out.
You may end up looking like Chris is a very fit individual, so I can probably accredit 100% to the food he's putting in him.
Exactly.
All right, man. Well, this has been another e-commerce conversations. I enjoyed it as always and learned a couple of nuggets or bars, should you say? Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.
And keep on growing.